Poor girl enters a fitting room in a clothing store to try on lingerie, not realizing a criminal millionaire was hiding there. They fall madly in love. Hey there, I'm Alex, your guide through today's extraordinary tale on Hearts of Crime. What you're about to witness is a story of passion and danger that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Trust me, when I say the twist at the end will leave you absolutely speechless. If you enjoy these forbidden love stories, please hit that like button and drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our daily uploads of these incredible stories. Stay with me until the very end. I promise the conclusion will shock you in ways you can't imagine. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode. Have a wonderful day, and may God bless you and your family. The exclusive boutiques of Velvet Whispers stood like a gleaming fortress on Fifth Avenue, its pristine display windows showcasing delicate lace garments that cost more than Penelope's monthly rent. She shouldn't have been there. This wasn't her world. But the invitation to the charity gala burning a hole in her handbag had changed everything. Just one decent outfit, she muttered to herself, fingers nervously playing with the frayed edge of her cardigan. It's something that wanted to scream imposter the moment I walked through the door. Her auburn hair fell in natural waves around her heart-shaped face as she glanced at her reflection in one of the many mirrors. Even in her simple jeans and worn sweater, Penelope possessed the kind of effortless beauty that turned heads. High cheekbones, expressive hazel eyes, and a smile that could illuminate the darkest room. But today, that smile was nowhere to be seen. This shopping trip represented everything she'd worked for. The countless double shifts at the diner, the graphic design night classes, the persistence that had finally landed her an invitation to the Arts Foundation Gala, where potential clients would be mingling. One connection there could change her life. Gathering her courage, Penelope approached a rack of sale items, trying to ignore the sharp gaze of the sales assistant, who clearly recognized she didn't belong. Her fingers ran across fabric softer than anything she'd ever touched. "The fitting rooms are in the back," the assistant said, with barely concealed impatience, "though these items start at $800. Penelope swallowed hard, but kept her chin up. "Thank you," she replied with dignity, selecting a midnight blue slip dress that had been marked down to a price that would still empty her savings account. She made her way to the fitting rooms, a luxurious alcove of plush carpeting and ambient lighting. Pushing open the door to the last room, Penelope stepped inside and froze. A man was crouched in the corner, his back to her, frantically stuffing something into a black duffel bag. Before she could scream, he whirled around, pressing one finger to his lips while his other hand gently but firmly covered her mouth. Up close, Penelope was struck by his devastating good looks, sharp jawline covered in designer stubble, piercing blue eyes, and dark hair that fell in perfect disarray across his forehead. "Please," he whispered, his voice carrying a hint of an accent she couldn't place. "I am not going to hurt you." For reasons she would question 1,000 times afterward, Penelope believed him. When he slowly removed his hand, she remained silent, heart hammering against her ribs. "What are you doing?" she finally managed, her voice barely audible. The man, dressed in what she recognized as a bespoke suit worth more than her car, glanced nervously at the door. "I'm hiding," he admitted, "and I will pay you $10,000 right now if you pretend you never saw me." Penelope's eyes widened. "Are you a criminal?" A humorless smile touched his lips. "Depends who you ask." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a wallet, extracting several $100 bills. "Please, just walk away." A commotion erupted outside, raised voices, hurried footsteps. The man tensed, jaw clenching. "They here," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "Who's here?" Penelope asked, curiosity temporarily overriding her fear. His eyes met hers, something in their depths making her breath catch. "People who want me dead." Before Penelope could process this alarming statement, the fitting room door burst open. Two men in dark suits stood there, their expressions hardening when they spotted the man behind her. "Mr. Blackwood," one of them said coldly. "Your brother would like a word." Penelope felt the stranger, Mr. Blackwood, shift behind her. "Gentlemen," he replied with surprising composure. "I'm a bit occupied at the moment." His hand settled on Penelope's waist. the gesture both protective and possessive. My girlfriend and I were just about to... Understanding dawned on Penelope's face as she realized he was trying to create a cover story. Against all logic and self-preservation, she found herself playing along, leaning back against his chest as if they were indeed a couple. "Could you give us some privacy?" she asked, summoning confidence she did not feel. We were in the middle of something. The two men exchanged glances, clearly thrown by her presence. The taller one studied her face intently, as if trying to place her. "We'll be waiting outside," he finally said. "5 minutes, Mr. Blackwood." When the door closed, Penelope spun around, her heart racing. "Who are you? Who were they? What have I just gotten myself involved in?" The stranger, Blackwood, ran a hand through his hair, momentarily disarming her with how the simple gesture highlighted his rugged handsomeness. "I am Elias Blackwood," he said, his voice low and urgent, "and I need your help. Those men work for my brother, who has been trying to kill me since our father died." Penelope took a step back, her back pressing against the fitting room mirror. "You expect me to believe that?" Elias Mass's eyes never left hers. "I can prove it, but not here." He reached into the duffel bag and pulled out a small velvet pouch, offering it to her. "This is worth more than what I offered before. Help me get out of here, and it is yours." "I dunn't want your money," Penelope replied automatically, though her fingers itched to open the pouch. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Then help me, because it is the right thing to do." "How do I know you were not the bad guy in this situation?" "You don't at all," Elias admitted, "but I promise you I'm not." Something in his voice, a raw honesty that couldn't be faked, made Penelope pause. Outside, she could hear the men talking in low, threatening tones. "If I help you," she said slowly, "you have to tell me everything. And if I don't like what I hear, I'm walking away." Relief flashed across his face. "Deal." He extended his hand. Penelope hesitated for only a moment before taking it, his palm warm against hers. "I am Penelope, by the way. Penelope Evans." "Pleased to meet you, Penelope," Elias replied, a genuine smile transforming his face. Though I wish it were under better circumstances, she couldn't help but return his smile, even as alarm bells rang in her mind. "So what is the plan?" Elias glanced at the dress she still clutched in her hand. "How do you feel about causing a scene?" 10 minutes later, Penelope emerged from the fitting room in the midnight blue dress, tears streaming down her face as she stormed through the boutique. "I cannot believe you," she shouted over her shoulder. 3 years together, and this is how you treat me." Elias followed, looking appropriately chastened, the duffel bag now concealed inside a Velvet Whispers shopping bag. The two men in suits watched with confusion as their target was suddenly part of a loud public breakup. "Penny, please," Elias called after her, using the nickname they agreed upon moments before. It didn't mean anything. "Save it," Penelope cried, her theatre classes from community college finally proving useful. She pushed through the boutique doors onto the busy sidewalk, Elias close behind. The men followed at a distance, unwilling to create a scene but clearly determined not to lose sight of their quarry. "You are surprisingly good at this," Elias murmured, as he caught up to her, taking her hand as if trying to reconcile. "You have no idea," Penelope replied, her mind racing. "Your car or mine? Neither. I'll be watching for them." Elias guided her toward the subway entrance. "We need to disappear." As they descended the steps into the crowded station, blending into the rush-hour masses, Penelope couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just veered dramatically off course. The mysterious Elias Blackwood, criminal or victim, she still wasn't sure, was looking at her with something like admiration. "Thank you," he said simply, as they boarded a downtown train, losing their pursuers in the crowd. Penelope realized she was still wearing the stolen dress, still clutching Elias's hand, still moving further away from the safe, predictable life she'd always known. "Don't thank me yet," she replied, catching a glimpse of their reflection in the subway window. Her in the elegant dress, him in his perfect suit looking for all the world like they belonged together. "Something tells me this is just the beginning." She had no idea how right she was. The subway car jostled as it sped through the underground tunnels, carrying Penelope and Elias deeper into the city and further from their pursuers. Penelope gripped the metal pole, Acutely aware she was still wearing the stolen boutique dress. "I need to change," she whispered, glancing down at the midnight blue fabric. "I can't exactly blend in looking like this." Elias nodded, his eyes scanning the subway map. "We'll get off at the next stop. I know somewhere we can go." "Tell me, where would that be?" Penelope asked, suspicion creeping back into her voice. "I'm not going to some random location with a man I just met who was hiding from killers in a lingerie fitting room." A smile tugged at Elias's lips, despite the tension. "Fair point. How about this? You choose where we go, but it needs to be somewhere safe, somewhere not connected to you." Penelope considered this while studying his face. In the harsh fluorescent light of the subway car, Elias Blackwood looked somehow more human than he had in the boutique, still impossibly handsome with his chiseled features and penetrating blue eyes. But there was vulnerability there too, a weariness around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. My friend Rachel mess apartment, she decided. She mess away on a work trip. It wes in Brooklyn. Relief flooded his expression. Perfect. 20 minutes later, they were climbing the stairs to a modest walk-up in a neighborhood that was neither fashionable nor run down. Penelope retrieved the spare key from under a loose brick in the hallway, a hiding spot Rachel had assured her was totally secure. "Not exactly Fort Knox," Elias commented, but his tone was light rather than judgmental. Inside, the apartment was small but tidy, a one-bedroom with mismatched furniture and walls covered in vintage movie posters. Penelope headed straight for Rachel's bedroom. "I am going to borrow some clothes," she called over her shoulder. "Make yourself useful and check if we were followed." Alone in Rachel's room, Penelope took a deep breath and tried to make sense of the past hour. She had helped a stranger escape what appeared to be dangerous men, stolen an expensive dress, and was now harboring a self-proclaimed fugitive. Her sensible life plan had definitely not included any of these activities. She changed into a pair of Rachel's jeans and a simple t-shirt, carefully hanging up the boutique dress. Stealing it hadn't been part of the plan, but in the chaos of their escape, there had been no time to change back. She made a mental note to somehow make it right later. When she emerged, Elias was standing by the window, his tall frame silhouetted against the fading daylight. He had removed his suit jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt, revealing strong forearms and an expensive watch. "No sign of them," he said, without turning around. "At least for now." "Good," Penelope replied, crossing her arms, "because it is time for you to explain what exactly is going on. Who are you running from, and why?" Elias turned to face her, and for a moment he seemed to be considering how much to reveal. Then he sighed and gestured toward the sofa. "It is a long story." "I've got time," Penelope countered, perching on the edge of the couch while Elias took the armchair opposite. "My name is Elias Blackwood," he began. "My family owns Blackwood Enterprises, real estate mostly, but we've been diversified over the years. My father built the company from nothing, and when he died recently, he left equal shares to me and my older brother Robert." But you don't look like a real estate mogul," Penelope interrupted. A wry smile crossed his face. "What does a real estate mogul look like?" "I don't know. Older, more corporate." "I've always been the black sheep," Elias admitted. "I wanted to use our resources differently, sustainable building practices, affordable housing initiatives. Robert is more traditional, profit-focused." "So your brother wants to kill you over business disagreements?" Penelope asked skeptically. Elias leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "It's more complicated than that. After father died, I discovered discrepancies in the company accounts, large sums of money being funneled into offshore accounts. When I confronted Robert, he claimed ignorance, but I kept digging. And what did you find? Evidence that Robert has been laundering money for years, using our legitimate business as cover. Not just that. He's been involved with some dangerous people who wouldn't hesitate to eliminate problems." Penelope frowned. "And you became a problem." "Exactly. Last week I compiled everything I found and was preparing to take it to the authorities. That night someone broke into my apartment. I wasn't at home, but my security system captured it all. 2 men, the same ones from the boutique today, searching my place, weapons drawn." "So you've been on the run since then?" Elias nodded. moving from place to place, trying to stay ahead of them while figuring out my next move. The evidence I gathered is in here." He patted the duffel bag beside him. "But I need more. Concrete proof that links everything directly to Robert. Otherwise, it must just my word against his, and he has powerful friends." Penelope sat back, processing this information. It sounded like something from a movie, not real life. Yet the fear in his eyes when those men appeared had been genuine. "Why were you hiding in a lingerie fitting room of all places?" she asked. A flash of embarrassment crossed his face. "Not my finest moment. I spotted Robert S. men on the street and ducked into the nearest store. The fitting room seemed like the only place to hide. I didn't expect—" His eyes met hers. "I didn't expect you." Something fluttered in Penelope's chest at the way he looked at her, like she was a surprise he hadn't known he needed. "So what now?" she asked, breaking the moment. "You can hide forever. I need to get to my father, his old cabin upstate. He kept a safe there with documents that could corroborate everything I've found. Robert doesn't know about it. It was our secret place. And after that I take everything to the FBI and hope it's enough to bring Robert down before he finds me." Penelope stood up and paced the small living room. "This is insane. I don't even know you. For all I know, you could be making this entire story up." Elias reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. After a few taps, he held it out to her. "Security footage from my apartment. See for yourself." Penelope took the phone hesitantly. On the screen, she could clearly see the two men from the boutique methodically searching an elegant apartment, guns in hand. The timestamp showed it was from 7 days ago. "Okay," she said slowly, returning the phone. "Let us say I believe you. What exactly do you want from me? Why tell me all this?" Elias ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of his internal conflict. "I need help getting to the cabin. Robert S. men will be watching all the obvious exits, airports, train stations, car rental places. But they don't know about you. They saw us together, but I'll assume you were just a random woman I used as cover." He paused. "After today, you can walk away. Go back to your life. I just need a head start." Penelope should have said no. Every rational part of her brain was screaming to walk away from this dangerous situation. But something else, something deeper and more instinctual, kept her rooted to the spot. "When would we leave?" Surprise flickered across Elias's face. "You're actually considering this?" "I haven't decided yet," she clarified. "But if, and that is a big if, I were to help you, when would we need to go?" "First thing tomorrow," he replied. "The longer we wait, the more time they have to find us." Penelope nodded, making up her mind. "I need to make a call." She stepped onto Rachel's small balcony, closing the door behind her. With shaking fingers, she dialed her boss at the diner. "Hey, Jerry. Something's come up. A family emergency. I need a few days off." She winced at the irritation in his voice, knowing this could cost her the job she desperately needed. "I'm sorry for the short notice. I'll make it up to you when I get back." After hanging up, she stared out at the Brooklyn skyline, the setting sun painting the buildings in shades of gold and pink. Was she really going to do this? Throw away everything stable in her life to help a man she barely knew? When she returned inside, Elias was standing exactly where she'd left him, an unreadable expression on his face. "I'll help you," she said, before she could change her mind. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "First, I drive. My car, my rules. Second, you tell me everything. No more surprises. And third," she took a deep breath, "when this is over, you make sure that dress gets paid for. I am not a thief." A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his features and making her heart skip a beat. "Deal," he said, extending his hand once more. As their palms met, a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. Penelope quickly withdrew her hand, unnerved by her body's reaction to him. "I'll take the couch," Elias offered, seeming to sense her discomfort. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." Later that night, Penelope lay in Rachel Yem's bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned lazy circles above her. In the living room, she could hear Elias's steady breathing, punctuated by the occasional creak of the sofa as he shifted. Her life had been utterly predictable until today. Work, study, save, repeat. Now here she was, harboring a fugitive millionaire and planning a dangerous road trip. The strangest part was how right it felt, like some dormant part of herself had finally awakened. She'd always played it safe, following the rules, never taking risks. Maybe that's why she had been stuck in the same place for so long. With that thought, she finally drifted off to sleep, dreams filled with piercing blue eyes and the sensation of running towards something rather than away. Morning arrived with the harsh sound of Penelope's phone alarm. She blinked awake, momentarily disoriented in Rachel's room until the events of the previous day came flooding back. Elias, the boutique, their escape. She padded quietly into the living room, expecting to find him still asleep. Instead, the couch was empty, a neatly folded blanket, the only evidence he'd been there at all. Panic seized her. Had he left, used her, and disappeared? Then she heard movement in the kitchen. Elias stood by the counter, 2 mugs of coffee in front of him, his hair damp from a shower. He changed into what must have been clothes from his duffel bag, dark jeans and a grey Henley that fit him perfectly. "Morning," he said, offering her one of the mugs. "I hope you don't mind. I figured we could both use the caffeine." "Thanks," Penelope replied, accepting the coffee and taking a grateful sip. "You re-up early. It's out the old habit," he explained. "My father believed sleeping past sunrise was a waste of potential." "Sounds intense." He was. A shadow crossed Elias's face. "But he was also a good man in his way. He taught me the value of hard work, even though we had more money than we could spend in several lifetimes." Penelope studied him over the rim of her mug. In the soft morning light with his guard down, Elias Blackwood looked less like a hunted man and more like someone carrying a heavy burden he wasn't sure how to put down. "We should get going," she said, finishing her coffee. "How far is this cabin?" "About 4 hours north, assuming no complications." Penelope nodded and went to change. She chose practical clothes from Rachel's wardrobe, jeans, a comfortable sweater, and sturdy boots. After a moment's hesitation, she folded the midnight blue dress and placed it carefully in her bag. Something told her this wasn't to the last she would see of it. When she emerged, Elias had packed his things and was standing by the door, keys in hand. "My car has parked a few blocks away, Siam," she told him, shouldering her bag. "It's nothing fancy, just warning you now." "As long as it runs, I am not complaining." They made their way cautiously through the neighborhood, Elias periodically checking behind them for any sign of pursuit. Penelope led him to a small parking lot where her aging Honda Civic sat waiting. "Told you," she said as she unlocked it. "Nothing fancy." "It's perfect," Elias replied with surprising sincerity. "Anonymous. Exactly what we need." As they settled into the car, Penelope felt a strange mix of anxiety and exhilaration. She inserted the key into the ignition and turned to Elias. "Last chance to back out," she offered. "I could still drop you at a bus station and forget this ever happened." Elias's eyes met hers, and in them she saw something unexpected. Not just gratitude, but a spark of the same excitement she felt. "Where is the fun in that?" he asked with a half-smile. Despite everything, Penelope found herself smiling back. "North it is, then." She started the engine and pulled onto the street, merging into the early morning traffic. As the city gradually gave way to suburbs and then to the open road, neither of them noticed the black SUV that pulled out several cars behind them, maintaining a careful distance as they drove toward what they hoped would be sanctuary. What they couldn't know was that their journey was about to become far more complicated and dangerous than either of them had anticipated, and that somewhere between the fear and uncertainty, something else was growing between them, something neither was prepared for, but both were powerless to resist. The winding country road stretched before them as Penelope's Honda climbed higher into the mountains. Fall foliage painted the landscape in brilliant reds and golds, a stark contrast to the tension inside the car. "We should stop for supplies," Elias said, breaking the silence that had settled between them. The cabin-s isolated, no neighbors for miles. Penelope nodded, grateful for the practical distraction. They had been driving for nearly 3 hours, the initial adrenaline of their escape giving way to a nervous anticipation of what lay ahead. "There's a small town about 20 minutes from here," Elias continued, checking the map on his phone. "We can get what we need there." The town, when they reached it, was little more than a main street lined with quaint storefronts that had seen better days. Penelope parked in front of a general store, its windows advertising fishing gear and local honey. "I'll go in," she decided. "You were too memorable." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment?" "It's a fact," Penelope replied, fighting a smile. "Your entire everything screams, 'I do not belong here.' Wait in the car." Inside the store, Penelope filled a basket with essentials: non-perishable food, bottled water, first aid supplies, and a flashlight. As she approached the register, her eye caught the local newspaper. The headline made her freeze. "Blackwood, ear missing, foul play suspected." She quickly added the paper to her purchases, keeping her expression neutral as the elderly cashier rang her up. "Heading up to the cabins?" the woman asked conversationally. "It's a beautiful time of year for it." "Yes," Penelope answered, forcing a smile. "Just a little getaway." "Well, you be careful," the woman said, handing over the change. "We have had some strangers in town asking questions. City types, not the usual tourists." Penelope's heart rate accelerated. "Oh? What kind of questions?" "About people passing through, showing pictures around." The woman lowered her voice. "Between you and me, they seemed like trouble. Sheriff E.S. keeping an eye on them." "Thanks for the warning," Penelope managed, gathering her bags. "We'll be careful." When she returned to the car, Elias immediately sensed her unease. "What happened?" Wordlessly, she handed him the newspaper. His jaw tightened as he scanned the article. "Robert S. spinning a story," he said, voice tight with anger. "Making it look like I am the victim when he is the one trying to have me killed." "It's not all day," Penelope added, starting the engine. "The cashier said men have been in town asking questions, showing pictures. Your brother IS men are closing in." Elias folded the paper, his knuckles white. "We need to hurry." The road to the cabin grew narrower and more rugged as they ascended further into the mountains. Finally, Elias directed her onto a nearly invisible dirt track that wound through dense forest. "Almost there," he said, his entire body tense with anticipation. The cabin appeared suddenly, a sturdy structure of logs and stone nestled in a small clearing. It was larger than Penelope had expected, with a wide porch and windows that reflected the surrounding trees. "Your father's idea of roughing it?" she asked as she parked beside it. A ghost of a smile crossed Elias's face. "He may have gone a bit overboard, but he loved it here, said it was the only place he could truly think." They approached cautiously, Elias leading the way with keys in hand. Inside, the cabin was both rustic and luxurious, handcrafted furniture, a stone fireplace, and modern appliances that seemed at odds with the wilderness setting. "The safe is in my father's study," Elias explained, moving with purpose through the main room to a door at the back of the cabin. The study was smaller, lined with bookshelves and dominated by a heavy wooden desk. Elias went straight to a landscape painting on the wall, a mountain scene similar to the view outside. "My father always said to keep the important things hidden in plain sight," he said, carefully removing the painting to reveal a wall safe. As Elias worked the combination, Penelope wandered the room, taking in the photographs on the desk. One showed a younger Elias with an older man, his father, she presumed, both dressed in hiking gear, mountains in the background. They were smiling, their resemblance striking. "Got it," Elias announced, as the safe door swung open. He reached inside and withdrew a thick manila envelope and a small metal box. Placing them on the desk, he opened the envelope first, spreading out its contents: documents, photographs, and what appeared to be financial records. "Boss, this is it," he said, his voice a mix of triumph and disbelief. "Bank transfers, offshore account numbers, communications with known criminals, all with Robert S. signature." He looked up at Penelope, eyes bright. "This proves everything." Penelope moved closer, examining the evidence. "Your father knew about what Robert was doing?" "He suspected," Elias replied, sorting through the papers. "That is why he left us equal shares of the company. He was hoping I could keep Robert in check. He paused at a handwritten letter. "This is addressed to me." As Elias read his father's words, his expression softened. "He knew," he said quietly. "He knew Robert would try to push me out. That is why he created this insurance policy." A loud crash from the front of the cabin shattered the moment. They froze, eyes locking in shared alarm. "The back door," Elias whispered urgently, gathering the documents. "Now!" They moved silently through the cabin toward the rear exit. Just as they reached it, the front door burst open. Voices called out, the same men from the boutique, joined by others. Outside they ran for the tree line, the dense forest their only hope for cover. They had almost reached it when a shout went up behind them. "There, by the trees!" A gunshot cracked through the air, splintering bark from a tree trunk inches from Penelope's head. She gasped, stumbling, but Elias caught her arm, pulling her forward. "Keep moving," he urged, his grip firm but gentle. "Stay low." They plunged into the forest, weaving between trees, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and their pursuers. The sounds of men crashing through underbrush followed them, along with occasional shouts of direction. "But this way," Elias said, leading her down a steep incline toward what sounded like running water. They emerged at a swift-moving stream, its rocky bed creating a natural pathway. "The water will hide our tracks," Elias explained, helping her down the slippery bank. They waded into the frigid water, wincing at the cold as they made their way downstream. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew fainter, but didn't disappear entirely. "There's an old ranger station about a mile from here," Elias said between labored breaths. "If we can reach it, there is a radio. We can call for help." The journey was grueling. Slick rocks, numbing cold, and the constant fear of discovery wearing them down. When the ranger station finally came into view, a weathered wooden structure perched on a rocky outcrop, both were exhausted. Elias broke a window to get them inside, helping Penelope through before following. The interior was dusty but intact, basic furnishings covered with protective tarps. "The radio should be here," Elias said, moving toward a desk in the corner. While he worked to get the radio functioning, Penelope peered out the windows, watching for any sign of their pursuers. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows through the trees. "Come on," Elias muttered, fiddling with dials and connections. "Work, damn it!" A crackle of static filled the room, followed by a tinny voice asking for identification. Elias sagged with relief. "This is Elias Blackwood," he said into the receiver. "I need to speak with FBI Special Agent Marcus Torres immediately. Tell him it's regarding Blackwood Enterprises and evidence of money laundering." There was a pause, then, "Stand by." While they waited, Penelope joined Elias by the radio. "How do you know this FBI agent?" "And I reached out to him before I went into hiding," Elias explained. "He has been investigating a criminal organization that I believe Robert has been working with. I just did not have enough evidence to bring to him then." The radio crackled again, and a deeper voice came through. "Blackwood, Torres here. You have got a lot of people looking for you." "Not all of them with good intentions," Elias replied. "I have the evidence I told you about, concrete proof linking my brother to everything we discussed. But we're in trouble. Armed men are hunting us." "We?" Torres questioned. Elias glanced at Penelope. "I am with someone, a civilian who got caught in the crossfire. We are at the old ranger station in Blackwood Forest." "Sending a team now," Torres responded. "Stay put and stay hidden. ETA 45 minutes. As the radio went silent, Elias turned to Penelope. "I am sorry," he said softly, "for dragging you into this. You didn't ask for any of it." "I made my own choices," she reminded him. "I could have walked away at any point." "Why didn't you?" he asked, the question that had been hanging between them since the beginning. Penelope considered her answer carefully. At first it was curiosity, then, "I don't know. Something about you made me want to trust you, to help you." Elias moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "And now?" The air between them seemed to charge with electricity. Penelope was acutely aware of his proximity, of the way his damp shirt clung to his shoulders, of his breath mingling with hers in the cool air of the cabin. "Now I am glad I did," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. He reached out slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch lingered, gentle fingers tracing the curve of her cheek. "Penelope," he began, her name sounding like a prayer on his lips. The moment shattered at the sound of breaking glass. Both whirled toward the source, a window at the back of the cabin, now sporting a jagged hole. "Get down!" Elias shouted, pulling Penelope to the floor as more glass exploded inward. They crawled behind an overturned desk, hearts pounding as footsteps crunched on broken glass. "We know you in here, little brother," a voice called, smooth, cultured, and laced with malice. "Why don't you come out and we can discuss this like family?" Elias tensed beside her. "Robert," he whispered. "And you too, mystery woman," Robert continued. "My men told me all about you, the beautiful stranger who helped my brother escape. I'm curious to meet you." Penelope felt a chill run down her spine at his tone. Elias' hand found hers, squeezing reassuringly. "The FBI is on their way," Elias called back, his voice steady despite their predicament. "It's over, Robert. I have everything, the accounts, the meetings, all of it." A harsh laugh echoed through the cabin. "And you think that matters? Do you have any idea who I am working with? People who can make evidence and people disappear without a trace." "Like you tried to do with me," Elias challenged. "A regrettable necessity," Robert replied, his footsteps moving closer. "Nothing personal, just business." "Our father knew," Elias said, changing tactics. "That is why he left me half the company. He was on to you, Robert." The footsteps paused. "You relying." "Read his letter yourself," Elias offered, slowly reaching for the documents they brought from the safe. "He knew everything. He was gathering evidence against you for years." "Then I'll take that too," Robert snapped, his composure cracking. "Hand it over and maybe I'll let your girlfriend walk away from this." Elias met Penelope's eyes, a silent communication passing between them. She nodded slightly, understanding his plan without words. "All right," Elias called. "We're coming out. Don T. shoot." Slowly, they rose from behind the desk, hands raised. Robert stood across the room, flanked by two armed men, the same ones from the boutique. He was taller than Elias, with the same striking features but harder eyes and a cruel set to his mouth. "The documents," Robert demanded, extending his hand. "They were in my jacket," Elias said, moving his hand slowly toward his inside pocket. Instead of documents, he withdrew the small metal box from the safe. Before Robert could react, Elias flipped it open, revealing not valuables, but a small device with a blinking light. "What is that?" Robert demanded, taking an instinctive step back. "Insurance," Elias replied calmly. "Father called it his truth bomb. It has been recording everything since I opened it, including your confession about making people disappear." Robert's face contorted with rage. "Shoot them," he ordered his men. "Both of them." As the men raised their weapons, the cabin's front door exploded inward. Armed agents in FBI windbreakers poured in, weapons drawn. Federal agents. "Drop your weapons!" In the chaos that followed, Penelope found herself pulled to the floor by Elias, his body covering hers protectively as shots rang out. When silence finally fell, she looked up to see Robert and his men in handcuffs, surrounded by agents. Agent Torres, a stern-faced man with salt and pepper hair, approached them as they got to their feet. "Perfect timing," Elias said, shaking the agent's hand. "Got here as fast as we could," Torres replied. "Your distress call came in just as we were preparing to move on your brother anyway. Your earlier tip gave us enough to secure warrants." He glanced at the device in Elias' hand. "Though that recording will certainly help the case." "And this," Elias added, handing over the manila envelope of evidence. As the agents led Robert away, he fixed Elias with a venomous glare. "This isn't over, little brother." "For yes, it is," Elias replied simply, his arm finding its way around Penelope's shoulders. The next few hours passed in a blur, statements given, evidence catalogued, medical attention for their minor injuries. It was past midnight when they finally found themselves alone again, sitting on the porch of the cabin wrapped in blankets provided by the FBI. "They'll need you to testify," Elias said, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "I know," Penelope replied, watching the stars that dotted the clear mountain sky. It is a small price to pay for justice. Elias turned to face her fully. What happens now? For you, I mean. Penelope considered the question. Back to real life, I guess. If Jerry hasn't fired me from the diner yet. Back to graphic design classes and dreaming about that Arts Foundation gala. About that, Elias said, a smile playing at his lips. I may be able to help with the gala. Dice on the board. Penelope laughed, the sound bright in the night air. Of course you are. And the diner job? I loved it for what it was, she said thoughtfully. But maybe it's time for something new. Something that scares me a little. Elias' hand found hers, fingers intertwining. I know the feeling. 3 months later, Penelope stood in front of a full-length mirror, hardly recognizing her reflection. The midnight blue dress, properly paid for this time, hugged her curves perfectly, its elegant lines making her look like she belonged in the glittering ballroom just beyond the doors. Ready? A voice asked from behind her. She turned to find Elias watching her, devastatingly handsome in a tuxedo that had definitely not come off a department store rack. In the month since their mountain adventure, much had changed. Robert was awaiting trial, his criminal empire dismantled. Elias had taken control of Blackwood Enterprises, implementing the ethical practices he always envisioned. And Penelope had found her voice and her courage. With Elias' encouragement, she left the diner behind and focused on her design work. Tonight's gala featured her first major commission, a complete rebranding for the Arts Foundation itself. As ready as I'll ever be, she replied, smoothing non-existent wrinkles from her dress. Elias crossed the room to stand before her, taking both her hands in his. You were going to amaze them, just like you amaze me every day. The journey from that chance meeting in a boutique fitting room to this moment had been filled with challenges. The media frenzy around Robert's arrest and the subsequent investigation had tested them both. There had been depositions and court appearances, threats from Robert's associates, and the complicated process of rebuilding a company from the ground up. Through it all, they had grown closer, their unlikely connection deepening into something neither had expected, but both treasured. Elias had shown Penelope a world of possibility beyond her careful, constrained existence. She, in turn, had given him something he never had. Someone who saw him for himself, not his wealth or his name. You know, Penelope said, reaching up to straighten his bow tie. If someone had told me 4 months ago that a wrong turn into a fitting room would change my entire life, I would have thought they were crazy. Elias caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. The best things in life are rarely planned, like falling in love with a millionaire who was hiding from hitmen. Exactly like that, he agreed, pulling her closer, though I prefer falling in love with the brave, beautiful woman who saved my life. Penelope smiled up at him, still sometimes amazed by the depth of feeling between them. We saved each other. The sounds of the gala filtered through the doors, music, laughter, the gentle clink of champagne glasses. Soon they would join the celebration, stepping into the spotlight together. But for now, in this quiet moment, it was just the two of them, an unlikely pair brought together by chance and bound by something far stronger. Ready to face the crowd? Elias asked, offering his arm. Penelope took it, standing tall and confident in a way she never would have before meeting him. With you, I'm ready for anything. As they walked toward the ballroom doors, Penelope reflected on the strange and wonderful path that had led her here. She had always believed that life was what you made it. Careful plans, sensible choices, minimal risks. Now she understood a deeper truth. Life was what happened when your carefully constructed plans fell apart, when you took chances that terrified you, when you opened your heart to possibilities you'd never imagined. Sometimes, the wrong door led exactly where you were meant to be all along. The ballroom doors opened before them, light spilling out to welcome them in. Together they stepped forward into the brightness, into their future. A future neither had planned, but both had chosen, one unexpected moment at a time. And in the end, that made all the difference. Wow, I told you that ending would be unexpected. If you enjoyed this story, please give this video a thumbs up and share your reactions in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Hearts of Crime for more captivating stories, just like this one every single day. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now for another incredible tale of love in the criminal underworld. Thank you for watching until the end. May God bless you and your family, and I'll see you in the next video.